Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and today I'm going to be taking a look at an IGN article detailing a first look at the Final Fantasy themed Magic the Gathering cards that are going to be coming out later this year. Now, I'll say right up front, I am not normally a Magic the Gathering player. I have some experience with TCGs, Pokemon League I played as a kid, Yu-Gi-Oh! I played into my late teens and early 20s, but I've largely left the card game life behind me. I'll still watch the occasional like CGB, Rarin, or, I'll watch that on YouTube. But I'm coming in here as a player not knowledgeable enough about Magic the Gathering to make sense of most of this stuff, minus a few minor details. But I'm very interested in this set, obviously, because it is Final Fantasy themed, and, that's kind of my thing. And I feel like that's probably the case for a lot of people who are hearing about this or are anticipating the Final Fantasy themed Magic the Gathering stuff. They may not play Magic the Gathering, but you know what we love? Collectibles and art. And nothing more collectible and artsy than a Magic the Gathering collaboration. Funny, I wonder if many people collect the Final Fantasy TCG. I have a stack of them back there, although not nearly as avid a collector as others. But IGN posted a first look at some of the card art, some of the card effects, as well as an interview about the actual decisions behind the decks that they built and what the decks they built are actually intended to do. So you can see here the title, Final Fantasy Commander Decks Revealed, feature Cloud, Tidus, and more. Specifically, and more being Terra and Ishtola, as it says right under there. So we have some details to go over, because I'm just learning about this stuff mostly for the first time. I actually have someone who is going to be sponsoring me to open packs when these actually come out, and they've taken some time to explain to me how the different packs work, commander decks, etc., etc. And still, obviously, I'm working on the details for that, but let's see what they have to say. Even if you don't play Magic the Gathering, you probably caught wind of the numerous video game crossovers in recent years, including Fallout, Tomb Raider, and Assassin's Creed. But today we've got an exclusive first look at one of the most exciting yet, Final Fantasy. Not just one Final Fantasy, from Terra to Ishtola, 4 different mainline games are represented across the pre-constructed commander decks headlining the set. So, we have an image gallery right here, and so we can actually take a peek at these. It's a little zoomed in on that first one, I guess just because of the zoom. I guess that's just because they're just trying to have a cool shot. So, Terra, Herald of Hope. Trance. At the beginning of combat on your turn, mill 2 cards. For those who are unaware, mill means send them from the top of your deck to your graveyard. That's just a little shorthand for it. Terra gains flying until the end of the turn. Now, if I'm not mistaken, flying just means there are effects that won't hit enemies that are flying. It's a status, effectively. I'd imagine some stuff deals more damage to flying, some stuff deals less damage to flying, or flying makes it ineffective. Played enough RPGs with the float status to at least have an idea of that. Whenever Terra deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2. When you do, return target creature with power 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. All right, so so Terra is actually like a resurrector, like a reanimator, I guess. That definitely is not what I would have expected for Terra. I would have expected just like raw magical force. T-Mobile, leave me alone. I see you in the bottom right. So interesting approach, but I know that the article goes over their decision making on that front. Cloud, ex-soldier. I like the titles at the top. That's all he is, just ex-soldier. To be fair, he does say that like 90% of the time when he's asked about it. So he has haste. If I'm remembering correctly, haste means you can attack immediately on the turn you are placed down. Yeah, I think that's what haste means. So most cards cannot just act immediately. They need something that allows them to go immediately. I think that's haste. When Cloud enters, attach up to 1 target equipment you control to it. So he gets to instantly get equipment to him as well. Whenever Cloud attacks, draw a card for each equipped attacking creature you control. Then if Cloud has a power of 7 or greater, create 2 treasure tokens. So with his equipment, if he gets to over 7, he gets to that bonus bit with the treasure tokens. Draw a card for each. So I don't know how card draw is supposed to be in Magic the Gathering. My most, I'll say recent. It's not really. It's been I don't know, 14, 15 years. But at least I watch content around this more. Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm more familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh! And in Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, it would be banned, like just automatically. Even though equipping is kind of a weird thing. Maybe it actually wouldn't be because equipping is not super popular outside of a few fringe things. This could end up being a lot of draw. Very curious to see what that actually ends up being like in the actual game. Tidus, Eunice Guardian. That's all he is. It's just Eunice Guardian. That's all. Really like the artwork for this one in particular. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may move a counter from target creature you control onto a second target. Oh god, is that like passing a blitz ball? Alright. Cheer! That's actually an ability right from the game. Raises attack and defense in Final Fantasy X. Strength and defense. Whenever one or more creatures you control with counters on them deal combat damage to a player, you may draw a card and proliferate. So I don't know what proliferate means. Obviously, drawing a card is one thing. And it can only be done once per turn. So let's see. Proliferate, MTG. What does it mean? A keyword action that allows a player to give more counters to players and permanents that already have counters. So you can give another counter, basically, whenever one or more creatures you control with counters. So you just add more counters to them. So it allows them to just keep building counters on top of them. Okay, if I'm understanding correctly. Ishtola, Knight's Blessed... I mean, they are going with that outfit for her, but it's still funny very specifically that she's the Knight's Blessed on this card. And also Cat Warlock. I didn't even look at the actual legendary creature, human warrior, human soldier mercenary, human wizard warrior, and Cat Warlock. I mean, yeah, that's correct. Vigilance. So I don't know what Vigilance does. Let's see. MTG... is a keyword ability that lets a creature attack without tapping. Well, now I gotta make sure... Haste... Oh, okay, so... Here we go. Haste is a keyword ability that allows a creature to attack or activate abilities as soon as it enters the battlefield. Okay. And Vigilance makes it so you don't actually need to tap. Okay, that makes more sense. Oh, well, then she can go really quick. At the beginning of each end of your turn, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, you draw a card. So if you could stay around long enough to actually do that, then I guess you get a little bit of card draw for that. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell with a mana value of 3 or greater, Ishtola deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. I feel like that's significant. Again, unfortunately, I'm not working with existing card knowledge. At least not in a major capacity. So, and I know, like, there are details on these cards, like, up here in the top right. These are the different, like, you know, they're blue, white. I'm colorblind, so I couldn't tell you what. I think that's black for the skull. I'm colorblind, so I'm not even trying to guess what the actual categories they're sitting in for what type of deck they belong to. I'm sure they'll go over this in the article. And then these are the actual commander deck packs and how they look. So you can see Revival Trance. Again, I'm colorblind. Yeah, so it looks like that's black. That's a little bit more clear there. So this is what, like, red, white, black, I believe. And this is red, green, white. And this is green, white, blue. And this is white, blue, black. I think I got those right. I'm only kind of guessing because I can't tell if that sun-looking thing is white or not because I don't know the symbol off the top of my head. And then there's also Collector's Edition Commanders packs. I don't know what the difference is, so hopefully they detail that. I doubt it's just the box, because that doesn't make any sense to me, because you're going to have to open the box to get the deck. Unless maybe people buy these sealed, and they just never, ever open them, and then it's just like, I have the Commanders box. Includes 100... Oh, wait. Is that what it says? Includes the 100... Alright, includes collector booster sample pack. So it comes with a sample pack. And this includes... Is that... I can't see. Like, it's... My eyes are... Does that say 100 something cards? They'll probably detail it here. Read on the conversation with Wizard of the Coast. Okay, set to launch this June, Magic's Final Fantasy crossover will be fully draftable, standard legal set, accompanied by the 4 pre-constructed decks in the gallery above. Each of these include 100 cards made up of both reprints and existing cards with new Final Fantasy art. Well, this says 100 cards, but maybe I don't understand. I can't even really read it because it's a little too blurry for my eyes. They're not great. My eyes, that is. Brand new cards designed with Magic's most popular format, Commander, in mind. And while Commander precons are always themed around certain characters, colors, or strategies, the twist here is that each of these is built around a single Final Fantasy game, 6, 7, 10, and 14. Final Fantasy games are so rich with flavor, beloved characters, and unique settings that choosing a single game as a theme provided more than enough material to design a full deck. See, now the problem is, every game that doesn't have a deck, everyone's like Final Fantasy fans especially, not even just Final Fantasy fans, but anyone who's like got a history with Final Fantasy games is gonna wonder, why not that? Why not Final Fantasy 8? Why not Final Fantasy 4? Where's 11? You know, it's gonna happen. Senior game designer Daniel Holt said, who is the commander lead for the set, approaching each deck as a single game also provided the opportunity to dive deep into the lore of each, capturing even more beloved moments than from across the game's storyline we may not have been able to achieve otherwise. That's actually really cool. We have so many. I wonder, though, because these are the Commander decks, but there are sample boosters. So I'd assume there are cards from the other Well, wait. I'm trying to think, because we saw a bunch of cards a few months back. Were there any from Final Fantasy games that weren't 6, 7, 10, and 14? Maybe that'll get answered here. Team decided on these 4 Final Fantasy games based on a balance of what they wanted for gameplay for each deck and how well known each story was overall. Well, it says that 7 and 14 were very clear picks. 6 and 10 took more discussion to arrive at, but were chosen partially because they were favorites amongst the team. This was one of those products where everyone in the building was invested in each stage of development. And we have so many passionate... Dude, I'd imagine you have some salty Final Fantasy fans in the building, too. Like, why didn't mine get picked? Of course, even within those picks, there are some decisions you have to make about direction. For instance, Final Fantasy VII Remake Trilogy has been running alongside development of this Magic set, so it's Commander Precon telling the story of the original, or its reality-bending reimagining. Dylan Devaney, principal narrative game designer at Wizards of the Coast and narrative lead for the set, says you'll see a bit of both throughout the deck's art, but the story itself will follow the 1997 classic. Okay, that's probably a good idea. Our core approach to 7 was to capture the original PS1 game's narrative while using Remake and Rebirth's modern aesthetics to push the fidelity of each character, design, story moment, and memorable location to the next level, if that makes sense. Kind of what people originally thought Remake was going to be. With that in mind, if a scene existed in both games, we had our choice of showing it as the original game did, how a modern version interpreted it, or a unique fusion of both. Hopefully this deck feels familiar and nostalgic to players of the original game and modern series. Speaking of nostalgia, Final Fantasy VI is a trickier nut to crack in some ways, as it lacks more modern art references than the other 3 games can provide. Devaney, yeah, I'm really curious to see what they do with the 6th one. Devaney says they wanted to stick close to what fans would expect from its pixel art sprites and limited concept art, while also expanding upon them in hopes that the character design should feel how you remember them, despite being a hybridization of many different references and new ideas. There are so many 6 cards that could be really, really interesting. I just wonder how are they going to have one for every one of the Magicites. I'd assume the Magitech Factory would probably be the equivalent of like a field spell. I think they're called field spells in Magic. Yeah, there's actually a lot. And then obviously the other party members like Celis, Locke, Shadow. I want to imagine what Mog is like. Amaro probably just uncontrollably attacks every time you go to like you're probably forced into the battle step with him or something, and he has to attack an opponent, like a card. I don't know. Maybe he'll have Trample. That would be interesting if he had Trample. To help accomplish that, Wizards of the Coast even consulted directly with the Final Fantasy VI team as they updated these characters to the standard needed for Magic art. We developed a workflow that asked concept artists and card artists to pull hallmark character designs from Yoshitaka Amano's original and legendary concept art, the original 6 sprites and the 6 pixel remaster character portraits to synthesize the most consistent elements of each character's design into something new. We also encouraged our artists to punch up finer details and... I'm assuming that's supposed to say explore, not B-Sex-Explore or BS-Explore. Maybe BS-Explore is a thing. Maybe that's like a term I'm unfamiliar with. Elements where they thought they could push fabric, patterns, texture, etc. Then we would meet with Final Fantasy VI review team, and they would give us feedback on what core elements they wanted to preserve and what new elements they were excited about. That's just a quote we've already seen. So the 4 games decided, but when it comes to Commander, that's only half the equations. Wizards of the Coast also need to figure out which characters would lead each deck. Cloud is obvious for 7. Holt tells me the others involve some brainstorming. Celis was considered for 6 since the deck is focused around the world of Ruin. Oh, the deck is very specific. I guess that makes sense because of her more graveyard aspect of things. It'd be really weird to have... It would actually be interesting to see if you could play the deck. Like, obviously, they didn't design it like that. They've just said it. But if they could design the deck around World of Balance or World of Ruin, like, you could kind of choose which direction your deck wants to take. And some cards, especially the heroes, may have different, like, again, obviously we know this isn't the case because they've just laid it out, but like that would have been a pretty interesting concept. While Yuna was considered for 10 as a fan favorite, they ultimately decided to stick with the lead character on those, but 14 is an MMO, which presented its own problem. Yeah, Terra is the technical lead of 6, obviously, that's outlined through Dissidia, and kind of like, the game itself does this. 6 is considered more open. A lot of people discuss who they actually think the main character of 6 is, and a lot of people would absolutely say Celis, and I think that's fair. But Terra you do spend the most time with through the first half, and then World of Ruin you spend the most time with Celis, which is again why she was largely considered. And then for, yeah, I mean, Tidus to me seemed like the obvious pick for 10. Like, yeah, I get Yuna, but like, it's like Tidus is the, he says it a million times, this is my story. And then for Y'shtola, it came down to a mix of popularity of the character as well as being a spellcaster. Her story and character development offered a wider range of abilities and moments to pull from to lead the deck. Going on to say the deck represents her significantly during her Shadowbringers arc. Yeah, she's got tons of crazy stuff in her Shadowbringers arc that she doesn't really exhibit before that. They did explore the concept of making the Warrior of Light commander players could use in their own on some fashion. That would have been wild. You imagine how much job changing would have to happen if the Warrior of Light was chosen? I mean, I'd assume they would go with Ardbert's design for Warrior of Light in quotes, which then, yeah, because I mean, actually, you know what would have been a really interesting design? What if they had made the Warrior of Light commander, but no, well, yeah, I guess you could still do this. They make the Warrior of Light commander, and they give you one of each card of each of the races and the genders, but they're not like, you just pick one of them to, yeah, that's a lot of art. I can imagine why they wouldn't have done that. Because then you can technically do the different jobs as their own cards, and they don't have to feature like Ardbert's art or anything. They just have to feature the outfits or the job crystals or something. Yeah, I can see why they wouldn't want to go with that. The amount of work to make that work and make it make sense, and then to decide the era, they probably have to go with the Shadowbringer / Endwalker era again as well. Yeah, I could see. I mean, Y'shtola again, Dissidia has already kind of told us Y'shtola is kind of their go-to for anything 14 related. Now comes the question of figuring out how to fit an entire video game story, characters, and themes into a single deck and the carefully balanced restrictions of Magic's 5 colors. Building these decks called for us to decide color identity for the chosen game itself, but also the gameplay we desired for them. Says Holt, going on to point that it's no mistake that all 4 include white. Okay, so here's the thing. If I want to have the best understanding, then I should read really quickly, I'll just pull it up on my phone, what each of the colors is actually considered archetypal. It is drawn from the mountain. Okay, so red, it is drawn from the mountains, embodies the principles of impulse and chaos. It's a fireball in the color apply. In gameplay, red's tendencies towards impulse and spontaneity are reflected by its game plan of maximizing bursts of damage and embracing chaotic, random effects like impulsive draw. It is played as an aggressive color that tries to keep up its momentum or swing tempo in its favor by power boosts, rapid combat keywords, burn spells, and bursts of temporary mana generation like treasure. So the treasure thing, was that not... What did Tidus have? No, not Tidus, sorry. I think it was Cloud who had red, right? Yeah. Yeah, he generates 2 treasure tokens. So that makes sense. So that's the more red aspected bit of him. Red's fervent destruction makes it easy to destroy artifacts, creatures, and even planeswalkers, and Red's emotional passions can also influence others into not blocking or goad others into attacking their enemies with efficiently cheap creatures that can beat down the enemy and a few high-end spells to finish them off. Red seeks to obliterate their opponent as quickly as possible. However, its recklessness causes its creatures to be cheap and have the lowest toughness out of all the colors. Okay, so it sounds like Zerg. Like, if I'm going to draw a comparison, it sounds like StarCraft Zerg. All right, now it says they all have white for a reason. So let's read that next. White. And I'm just going to read in gameplay. In gameplay, white virtues of teamwork and balance are represented by its playstyle of deploying small but multitudinous creatures and enacting symmetrical effects that benefit all players or equalize all players. As the strongest defensive color, white utilizes a variety of bolstering, life gain, and protection spells to keep its creatures and themselves safe from harm's way. In addition to taxing enemy plans and directly removing any threats such as creatures, enchantments, or artifacts, In addition to being friendly to creatures, white is also proficient at enhancing its army with non-creature spells, such as equipment and auras, and dispensing combat tricks, ensuring favored trades that coerce the opponent into lost fights and eventually a lost game. Although white can address many different types of threats, white's uncreative inflexibility causes most of its answers to be situational and vulnerable to being answered themselves, such as enchantment removal against white's aura prison effects. Okay. So we've got to, so they clearly wanted them all to have some defensive play. I mean, even it's saying right here that that's considered generally standard. So Terra has white here. We can see that. I wonder if that's the flying effect is considered the white, because that might be, again, it might be protective. But again, yeah, that makes sense because it's situational, because flying is not something you will always want, which means that if somebody has a counter to flying, like if you're running a Terra deck, and they have an answer to flying, she's way more vulnerable than she otherwise would have been, especially as a 3/3. Then we have, he's also white, and he can, well, he provides the treasure tokens. I wonder if that's because of the, not the haste. Let's see, in gameplay, deploying small but to enable, yeah, maybe it's because of all the equipment, the bolstering, the life gain. Yeah, I mean, it might just even be the draw card aspect to it. Yuna's Guardian, I'd assume this almost certainly is because of cheer. Because the moving of the counters, I know blue is like control deck. I know that much. As you can tell, I mentioned CGB earlier. Of course I know what blue does. So, I know full and well that I don't even need to read the description of blue. I have a pretty good idea of what blue is. And a lot of his qualities definitely scream more blue to me. And then Ishtola, white as well. Okay, they all have white as part of their element. And that seems to be the life gain from casting the non-creature spells that's largely associated with that. So then we have what, green? Green is the tree-looking symbol. In gameplay, green's bonds with nature and its living beings, represented by its capacity of adding many lands onto the battlefield, among other mana acceleration and mana fixing tactics, and its command of large, overwhelming creatures, boasting the best curve of creatures out of all colors. Green can also lead a swarm of numerous small creatures, though at a lesser volume than white. Having a playstyle mostly focused on creatures, green augments its threats by increasing their size, having them fight and bite enemy creatures directly, and decaying unnatural objects like artifacts and enchantments, clearing the way for a blunt but effective win. However, green's naivete and complacency from its own acceptance of the status quo make it over-reliant on its creatures. Green cannot directly destroy most creatures, and green primarily deals with other creatures by using its creatures via fight and bite effects. So, amongst our ones we have here, specifically, Cloud is green, which kind of makes sense, because Cloud already reads like he wants a lot of creatures that are equipped with their own spells alongside of him, in order to gain card advantage and eventually generate treasure tokens as long as he has enough attack himself. So I understand his green tendencies. His green tendencies, I think it's largely because of the one or more of the effects of cheer. When any of them deal, again, if any of them deal combat damage to a player, not to another creature, interestingly enough, you may draw, and also says combat to a player. Could you turn a creature on? I don't know if there's effects in Magic that you turn a creature on yourself just to like force card advantage of some kind. And also, because what if you turned on yourself, proliferated the counters, and then drew cards to try to get carded? I doubt that's a thing. But yeah, I can see where the green aspects come into play for those two characters. And then black is the last one that I really feel like I don't need to read blue. Maybe I should, just to be fair. But it is. In gameplay, black's willingness to use a moral tool such as death and mental afflictions is represented by the target's destruction and discard spells. Well, I can already see where she gets this. This whole deals 2 damage to each opponent bit, and also whenever a player loses life, you get to draw a card. Yeah, that instantly reads as, I can see where the black comes from that. Black harnesses its own dastardly specialties as well, such as weakening victim stats. In combination with attrition strategies such as reanimation spells or gradual life drain, black can reduce the opponent's outs until they have nothing left but defeat. Its ruthlessness can put it into precarious positions with little resources, such as After spending too much life or sacrificing too many creatures, Black's fascination with fear and death makes it a struggle to deal with unfeeling, lifeless artifacts. Black's tempting selfishness also makes it the color with the highest tendency towards monocolor, with Black being the color with the most colored pips in its cost. Okay. So I can see, again, I can see where that, it's pretty obvious where that, I need to see more of the creatures to see what she plays alongside, but I can easily get that. Now, I am going to read blue just to see what the description of it is. Blue's talents of wit and foresight are represented by counter spells and potent draw spells. Yeah, we can see that with the blue cards here. Disrupting opponents' strategies and providing themselves with more of their own stratagems, such as mimicry and theft. Blue, having a proclivity of more mind than matter, tends to wield more non-creature spells than creatures, such as sorceries, instants, and artifacts. Blue is the strongest when played defensively, though effects like bouncing and untapping that buy time for setting up evasive saboteurs, incremental hits from flyers, and value generators. Blue takes control of the game, ensuring an inevitable fate. Yeah, it squeezes you to death. That's again, it's a control deck. So yeah, that all just reads as control deck. Blue's perfectionism and inaction from trying to obtain as much knowledge as possible before executing a decision makes it more reactive than proactive. As such, Blue must wait for their opponent's actions. Yeah, you're effectively stalling until you can take control of the game with the right abilities. Yeah, control. I actually, if I had to pick a style, I would probably go control. So I am that scumbag. So it's interesting enough to guess that. So we got to see those 4 cards. So where were we? We read that. Comes to figuring out. All right, building these decks called for us to decide color identity. Here's where we were. As mentioned, the deck for 6 is catered around the latter half of the game. As such, it's essentially all about rebuilding your part. That makes sense. I hadn't thought about that. When I think reanimation, I think of, reanimating the dead. But it makes total sense that the theme of, you start with, Celis starts the second half of the game alone, and the whole point of the second half, like you said, is to rebuild your party. So I guess that makes sense by bringing other creatures back from the graveyard. For 7, Cloud wielding a big sword lines up nicely with equipment. That's it. Cloud's got a big sword. Equipment. Let's go with that. Of a white-red magic deck. Behold says that adding green to the mix let us tie in the power matter cards and cards that reference the planet and life stream. Okay, I actually like that. While Tidus's ability to pass counters around might lead you to think that... oh, there you go. Might lead you to think that deck for 10 is all about Blitzball. This classic white-blue-green strategy is actually primarily came from the idea of the game's sphere grid. That also makes complete sense. Holt also admits that the theme for 14 was tricky to land on, but white, blue, black color identity allowed them to lean into non-creature spellcasting theme, while also including the characters they wanted to. We'll see how much else they include. There has to be an Alpha No and Alisei card, right? It has to be a Graha card, right? Last but not least, the commander might be all about your leader, but RPGs are often about your party, and Wizards of the Coast won't leave the supporting... Okay, well, that answers that question. Final Fantasy games are full of lovable and villainous characters. Kefka. Oh, we know Kefka has his own card. We've seen Kefka's card. We've seen Sephiroth's card. We've seen Emmett Selk's card. Like I made a brief video about them a while back, specifically about the artwork, but all the same, acknowledging those cards exist. And getting them into these decks was very important. While I can't talk specifics of who is included in each deck or their abilities, fans can expect to see some of their favorite characters in the 99 of each deck as new legendary creatures and captured in action on other exciting spells. Magic's Final Fantasy set will release on June 13th, and if you don't see your personal favorite Final Fantasy game or character here, don't worry, Holt assures me all 16 mainline games will have their moments to shine in the accompanying products. Okay, yes, so the Commander decks might focus on those 4 games, but expect stuff from everything. So probably expect Cecil, maybe expect Kane, expect Bartz, expect Clive, Noctis, still hold out for those cards. We'll be seeing more of those in the time to come. Returning to the same territory as Warhammer 40,000 Commander decks, all 4 of these decks will be available in both the regular version, MSRP 69. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's expensive. The latter of which will feature all 100 of the cards in each deck. Oh, okay. So here's what we were wondering. All of the cards have in a special Surge foil treatment. So the decks here, this is 100 cards. The collector's is 100 cards with the foil treatment. Okay, so it's the same cards, all the same. All right, got it. And then I think this part of the interview at the bottom is just the full interview, which just goes into why they chose it. But I feel like this top bit probably summarizes this. So if you really want to read the individual bits. I mean, yeah, like, let's just read through it. Like, a graveyard effects rebuilds the large ensemble. Yeah, so the overview at the top covers everything here. I mean, even just glancing through, I can see that I'm basically going to be rereading the entire thing. But it's really interesting. I think this is going to be an insanely popular set. Again, Final Fantasy fans want merch. They are willing to spend money on merch. They don't care if they play Magic the Gathering. They care about merch. And Magic the Gathering is one of the most collectible things out there. It is still strange to me, though, because Final Fantasy has its own... Like, look, I can go grab the cards back. I just keep a few on the shelf. Like, I have a bunch of... Look, I have a few in cases, even. Look. I have Chaos. See? Like, they have their own TCG, so it's just so weird to me that... Oh, he's upside down, idiot. Like, it's just so weird to me that they're also doing this. But the big thing is that a lot of the Final Fantasy TCG cards are, like, just strictly old artwork or like, 3D renders of cards that, you know, that exist in other games, but they're printed on cards. There is some original art, but that's the case with a lot of these. These are entirely original, so it's very interesting to see how this, like, whole thing happened. But if you are someone addicted to Final Fantasy related art and card games at the same time, the Final Fantasy TCG, it sells out pretty regularly, and it's got a pretty decent community behind it. I'm not too involved myself, but I know a few people that are, and they're always pining for more people. They're always complaining about sets being sold out and stuff too, so it's got its own thing going on as well. But that was fun taking a look at the artwork for this, getting into a little bit, and honestly learning a little bit more. I really should pay more attention, since I do watch a decent amount of, like, the TCG crossover people. People noticed I've commented on a SEMO video recently, so they'll know that I do watch some card game stuff. I should definitely learn more about Magic the Gathering before these sets come out, so I can understand what I'm looking at and reading a lot better. All the same, that's going to be a wrap for this video. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let me know if you're planning on picking up these packs later in the year, and what kind of artwork you're hoping for, what characters you're hoping to see in those different cards, and be honest with me, how much are you planning on spending? I know some of you out there. Some of y'all got, like, pensions and stuff put away for that. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, take care.